with a 16th to go. Gunrunner, Exaggerator on the outside. Nyquist and Exaggerator, they're coming to the line together. And Nyquist is still unbeaten. He has won the Kentucky Derby.
The 143rd Annual Kentucky Derby this Saturday. It's known as the fastest 2 minutes in sports. And here to talk about the race is Del Mar Racing Secretary David Jerkens. David, this morning, I bet you were up, or probably you were on a flight, right? So you didn't get to watch the draw.
I was, but definitely checked out the draw for sure.
Anybody who's into racing was watching the draw. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Derby's a big deal, but it's even a bigger deal for San Diego race fans with the Breeders' Cup on the horizon this fall. Could you explain why the Derby's extra special to us this year?
Sure. I mean, it's the one race that every sports fan can identify with, the Kentucky Derby, obviously. So the chance that the Kentucky Derby winner may run in the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar this fall or perhaps this summer is exciting to all of us.
Or maybe get them out here for her for the Pacific Classic.
Pacific Classic, exactly.
So today's draw, where horses basically find out where they're starting from. Every horse is dreading being
right
on the inside. Anything happened today on the draw that affected racing odds?
You know, you look at it, and I think the favorites are well suited where they're positioned. I think, like you mentioned, you really don't want to be on the rail. The dreaded one hole, even the two hole, so many things can happen from that angle. So I think if I'm the connections of Classic Empire, Always Believing, I'm pretty happy with how the draw unfolded.
Being that in that one hole, the congestion is the one thing, but having to wait while 19 other horses get loaded, horses are, I imagine when you're in that gate, you're itching to go, and having to wait for 19 horses, that's the other problem, being on the inside, right?
No, exactly. And if there's a horse that wins from the one hole, they certainly deserve it, that's for sure.
All right, the Derby always attracts a big field. 20 horses.
Right.
I mean, that...
A lot.
Just flat out scary, is it not?
It is. It's the only race in the country where you have 20 horses competing against each other. So it makes for positioning that's key, obviously. The jockey has a big responsibility. Just, as what trainers will say is just try to get your horse out of trouble the best you can. So that's why certain horses prefer to be on the outside, more room to maneuver around. So again, yeah, it's the best horse doesn't always win, that's for sure.
The sentimental choice is going to be the one-eyed horse, right?
Right.
Talk about Patch a little bit.
So Patch drew 20.
Yeah.
So
we'll have the longest distance.
Right. I think Patch is a horse that I would probably not think would win, but the sentimental favorite, and maybe would be worth putting a couple dollars to show, perhaps.
Just to show, we're in place to show. All right, let's talk about the two favorites, Classic Empire and Always Dreaming. Classic Empire starting in the 14th gate, and Always Dreaming starting in the 5th gate.
Right.
Your thoughts about those two horses as we look at them right here?
Well, Classic Empire was the champion 2-year-old, so again, for our fans at Del Mar Breeders' Cup, not only may you see the Derby winner, but you may see the future Derby horses in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So that's where Classic Empire established himself as a top 2-year-old. He put it together in the Arkansas Derby. He's a little quirky horse. He doesn't like to get onto the track every morning, so they've worked with him. But he's a horse that could be getting good at the right time.
4 or 5 winners, last Derby winners have come from California. No Bob Baffert this year, but maybe can you talk a little bit about Gromley? Is that the favorite from the California contingent?
Like you mentioned, no Bob Baffert, which is going to be odd.
Weird.
This Breeders' Cup, this Derby day for sure. Gormley is a horse that won the Santa Anita Derby, and the time was slow. However, John Sheriff's a trainer, has won the Derby before with Giacomo, and don't discount the West Coast horses as they've proven the last 3 years. They've won the last 3, 4 out of the last 5, so Gormley and IRAP are probably the two top contenders from the West.
Obviously, the Triple Crown is can't win the Triple Crown without winning the Derby. California Chrome's owner was pretty upset back in 2014 when his horse lost to fresher horses. Do you remember this soundbite? We want to get your reaction to it.
If you've got a horse that earns points to run in the Kentucky Derby, those 20 horses that start in Kentucky are the only 20 eligible to run in all 3 races.
So, can a horse be held you know, the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown and then run an upset of Triple Crown winner? Should that happen?
No, I disagreed with those comments. I mean, you know, part of the Triple Crown is the challenge of what it presents and the new shooters that you know, you'll encounter in the Preakness and the Belmont. So if you limit it to just 2 horses total in the Triple Crown, by the time the Belmont Stakes, you may only have 4 runners, 5 runners. So I just think that was probably made out of emotion, that comment, and I would disagree.
David, that's your close-up. You have 5 seconds left. Who's going to win the Kentucky Derby? Well,
this year, I think, as much as I'd like to see a California horse win this year, I'm going to go with Irish Warcry. Graham Motion, the trainer, has won the Derby before with Animal Kingdom, and I just think Irish Warcry is the way to go.
Irish Warcry, everybody. That's your pick. Chris Ello's coming up at 6:45. David, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the 5 o'clock hour of KUSI's news. The 6 o'clock hour is coming